All right, everybody, welcome back to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are above 500 for the first time in 2019. They have now won 4 games in a row, including the last 3 at home during that little 3-game home stretch. And now they will load up the buses and head to the Northwest and grab hold of a very important divisional game against the Cleveland Browns. You know the Browns, the Super Bowl champions on paper at the start of the year. They're now 3-6. Joining me is Mr. Ben Anderson, and just a real quick run through some things because of the short week. Mike Tomlin spoke yesterday rather than the usual Tuesday. Just some injury update things. James Conner was a full go today at practice. He looks to be a full go for the game on Thursday. Ramon Foster was back at practice today. He is through protocol, I do believe. And on the downside, Rosie Nix is still dealing with a knee and is more than likely not going to play. Benny Snell still out after his knee injury as well. And you got a couple of guys, Ola Denny and Chiquillo, dealing with some issues of their own, a hip and a back, hip and ribs, respectively there. So that's just a little update on the latest stuff. Everybody else seems to be pretty healthy other than the usual bumps and bruises that you get by the time you get to the 11th week of the NFL season. But with that said, Ben, I hope you are well tonight. And what was your thinking as you watched the Steelers' defensive performance? What can you really think of the last time you saw a Steelers defense play like that?
It's been a while. I mean, I look. There's still a lot more splash, on our defense than there is substance. It's not, and I hate to say this, but there's a lot of nuance here. You don't have to be fully on board and think that God's gift, or totally think they suck. It's just a mirage. That's not it. That's not the way it is. They're a very talented unit, but I don't trust them yet to get a stop when they have to. And truly great defenses can do that. When they have to get a stop, they get a stop. What our defense does is they're opportunistic. They look for opportunities to make a splash, and when those opportunities are there, they jump on them. But they're not a team that's going to line up on 3rd and 8 and definitely get the stop and get off the field. They're not that unit yet. That's not to say that they couldn't become that unit. They're still a young team, a young unit, young defense at this point, but they're just not there in that capacity yet.
Yeah, I think we also have to take into account too that they played a Rams team that is clearly struggling offensively. I will say this: I thought that McVay went away from his running game, more specifically Todd Gurley. And then secondly, and I do credit the Steelers for this. I mean, to limit Cooper Kupp to 0 receptions was absolutely stunning.
More importantly, what was truly impressive, and this goes against what I just said, is the Rams were 1 of 14 on 3rd down. Okay. But they also got an awful lot of conversions on 1st and 2nd down via those long runs from Gurley. And if Gurley's been on a pitch count all year, he's averaging like 15 touches per game. If he wasn't on that kind of a pitch count, I don't know that things would have worked out the way that they did. The defense was stellar. 3 points. Yep. 3 points. I mean, what more can you say? They only allowed 3 points. The other 11 points were given up by 9 points were given up by the offense, and that's really on them. Pouncey, I don't want to say Pouncey twice, but it kind of was Marquise Pouncey twice. On the safety, it was really David DeCastro, but Pouncey had a shot at Donald when he broke through the line. It was really dumb play call.
Absolutely, that's where I was
really stupid. You do not call a slow developing play action play when you're that you're inside your own 5-yard line, much less on your 2. It was just dumb.
Yeah.
And I mean, Donald saw an opportunity and he jumped at it. He's like, okay, great. You're going to give me this shot. I'm going to get a safety. And he did. The offense was not good and the defense was much better, and that's why you've got fans singing their praises and saying the offense sucks. When we get to Mason, I'll tell you why I think he grew as a player this week. I really do.
Yeah, and we will definitely get to him. I think that's part of what we do every week is we talk about his progress and, just I don't want to spend too much time on it because he's not a Steeler, but Aaron Donald is
really good.
I mean, he did some things to our offensive line, David DeCastro, who's a Pro Bowler, Marquise Pouncey, who's a Pro Bowler. He made those guys look absolutely horrendous at times. And it would have been real easy to go, oh, come on, DeCastro, come on, Pouncey. Aaron Donald is the best defensive lineman in the game, and I think we all saw why. His strength, his leverage, everything is just unbelievable in that guy. So I'll just leave it at that. But those guys have nothing to be ashamed of because he is just a stud. Before we get into the offensive stuff, let's stay defensive here because this is something we were going to talk about last week. We got sidetracked, and Bud Dupree, we know that he's making his $9 million this year, and will become a free agent. He's clearly stepped up his game. We don't see those wide arcs out and around the quarterback as if he's heading over towards, Mount Lebanon or something like that to get the quarterback. Everything just looks so much better with him. He's making big plays. He's causing turnovers.
He has a bull rush. Where did that bull rush come from?
Exactly. I
mean, he was manhandling Whitworth on Sunday, and Whitworth's good.
Big, strong, good. Yeah. I know it's only week 11, but has he priced himself out now of Pittsburgh?
If he keeps playing like this, yeah. In my opinion, he has. I mean, and basically, after this game, I kind of put him at Anthony Barr money, which is like $13.5, $14 million a season. Yeah. But if he keeps playing like this, he could get more on the market, and the Steelers aren't going to be able to match that. They got to pay Watt, and they can't pay both guys $20 million a year. That just isn't possible. You've got to pay everybody else too. And Juju's about to get in the $16-17 million range himself.
Yeah.
So it's not practical. It's not feasible to keep everyone that you want to keep. It just doesn't work out that way. And honestly, it's one season, man. Do you really want to put big money on a guy who performed for 1 year?
That's where I've been.
Look at the track record for teams that have done that. Things don't usually work out. And I get it. People are excited because Bud's finally performing to his perceived potential. But man, that's a big bet on a guy who's performed for 1 year. And I don't know, man.
I'm not willing to take it. I'm with you. We've talked about this in our private conversations that it's great. I love seeing him improve. I love seeing this attitude. As you mentioned, he's developed a bull rush. He's developed some other things. He's almost a completely different player, but I can't help but wonder if this is not just another one of these players that you and I have seen our entire lives who turn it on in that contract year, and they get paid, and then they just revert back to being kind of that guy that was supposed to be so good and just really isn't. And I'm terrified of that, and that's just another reason why, I don't think that it's a good idea to bring him back, especially if it comes back at the money that it's certainly looking like right now.
Well, and here's the flip side of that, though. The other side of that argument is, Bud finally has a different outside linebackers coach,
True.
Keith Butler, and Keith Butler has a very good resume as a linebackers coach, and this could be just one more guy that Butler brought to his potential. So that's the other side of it, and that's the risk of letting him leave. But honestly, if he keeps performing at this level, I don't think this is even a conversation. I think he's gone. I don't think the Steelers are going to try and pay him as much as he can make on the market. So unless he wants to stay for a significant hometown discount, it's just not going to work out.
I agree, and I also think it's important what you said about Keith Butler because, look, Joey Porter was a guy that we all rooted for. He was that guy that every great defense just had to have, and I don't know that he ever really did anything to impress me as an outside linebackers coach. I didn't see a whole lot of growth in any of the guys that he coached. And Keith Butler, as you said, a proven record of coaching up guys at that position, and he takes over that this year. Yeah, including himself. Yeah, Joey. I don't know. I think it's going to be fascinating if Dupree keeps this pace up for sure. Also defensively too. I can't go through this podcast without mentioning Fitzpatrick again. And
God.
We've beaten the dead horse. We're in total agreement. This was like a great trade, and thank you to my.
I don't want to say it was the greatest trade ever because that was definitely Bettis.
That was Bettis.
Getting Bettis for a second was robbery.
Yeah,
but getting Fitzpatrick for a one, I got to tell you, I don't see any downside to this so far. I really do not. And the people who do, please. Tell me what you're thinking. Explain to me where you're coming from. Maybe there's something here I'm not seeing, but this guy has been stellar. And the defense itself has been stellar. Yeah. And, it seems to all come down to communication in the back end at this point that's improved so much. And the fact that he's so good at locating the ball in the air.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the numbers since the first two games, and then when he came in at the San Francisco game, you can't deny the improvement. And by the way, Miami winning a second straight game has now moved that pick. It would be the 20th pick right now. So I know a lot of people were all upset about that, thinking that Miami would have two picks maybe in the top 5. If things went worse, so to speak. But hey, it's as we get better, that pick changes. So I'm totally fine with it. But yeah, Fitzpatrick, just incredible ball skills, incredible anticipation. Just I don't know what more you could say about him. There's just some great stuff out there to watch on him, and he gives you the videos give you a really, really good example of how he sees the field. We are
5
of course
picks in 7 games, man.
It is nuts. Yeah, he's tied for the league lead already.
I don't know, but the guy has 7 career interceptions, and 5 of them are in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
you think that Miami maybe regrets the fact that they put him at slot corner instead of leaving him in his natural free safety position?
Oh man, I mean. Well, hey, Flores is down there doing his Belichick imitation, and this is where you're going to play because this is what's blah, 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 blah. I don't care. He's a Steeler. I love it. He seems to be enjoying his time in Pittsburgh. You guys seem to get along well with him, so let's just keep that train rolling. We are, of course, presented to you by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh, where you can get the brand new, it just was featured this Sunday, brand new I Heart Football, and it's got a little hypocycloid inside the heart, black and gold shirt. Very cool, great shirt, and the charity that is being benefited is the Colette Louise Tisdall Foundation, something to check out. $8 from every shirt sold goes to that foundation, so please consider as always, and thanks once again to 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. Okay, so I keep putting off Rudolph, and I'm going to do it one more time here, Ben, because I want to ask you, a lot of talk has come up in the last 48 hours. Mike Tomlin, is he suddenly a coach of the year candidate in your opinion?
No.
Because
there's a whole lot of season left and a lot can happen. So talking about coach of the year right now at the beginning of November is dumb. Sorry.
Well, it is, and it's another sign of the knee-jerk reaction NFL society.
Look,
I mean, just society in general.
I'm just going to say this. I know that I should be more patient about this argument that people have on social media about whether or not Tomlin is a good coach or a bad coach or should be fired. There's a whole lot of nuance in there that people on both sides of this argument refuse to acknowledge, and that is true. Okay. Mike Tomlin is a very good football coach who has deserved some criticism. Okay.
Yeah.
You might be good at your job and not be perfect at it either. And you don't have people that show up at Walmart where you're working and go, "You suck. You deserve to be fired. You should be out of here." And that's the thing that I don't think that people are really trying to wrap their arms around. They've taken a position and they're going to dig their heels in, and no matter what, this is the way it is. And, there's a whole lot of season left, and all of you are going to have lots of time to gloat about how you were right on both sides of this argument, and you're both wrong.
Well, I first of all, I agree 100%. There are still 7 games left in this season to be played. This team could all of a sudden lose to Cleveland, stub its toe against the Jets, and we're not even having this conversation anymore. At 5-4, where we were, yes, I think he and his staff have done a great job. I think the players need to be credited with getting this thing back on track as well. I will say, I was ready after the Patriots loss. I was ready to say, I think it's time for change. I just felt that way. I feel better about Mike Tomlin today. It's not that I didn't think he wasn't a good football coach. I just think that some ships had sailed and maybe it was time. So I am impressed with this, but no, I don't start talking about coach of the year right now. I'll start talking about that if this team is sitting there at let's say 9-6 going into that final Baltimore game in Baltimore. Then I'll talk about it if he gets them into the postseason. But it's typical Monday morning chatter. Peter King was all over the Steelers this week, and he hasn't said a word about them in the last 6 weeks. But hey, flavor of the month type thing. But that's the NFL, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's a league. We talk about this every year. It's a league where the landscape changes every 4 weeks.
Yep.
And right now, the Steelers are riding high. It's fantastic. It's great. I love it too.
Sure.
But enough with the hyperbole. Enough with the I was right. Yeah. You were right, and you were also wrong. And enough. Okay? Just try and see that gray area. Try and see this for what it really is.
Exactly.
And yeah, fine. I get it. You're tired of people who, no matter what, trash Tomlin. And so you take in the opposite position and you just you're going to jump on them now that you have an opportunity to do so. Fine. Great. I get your frustration. But basically what you got to do is ignore those people or be willing to acknowledge where they're right and point out where they're wrong. And most people in this argument can't do that for some reason. They just can't see both sides of the argument. And it's not even that difficult. I mean,
no, I mean, one thing I know is that people hate facts.
Right.
They hate to have facts thrown into an argument because then it takes away their shouting, screaming, yelling, and all that stuff.
I mean, basically, what it comes down to, Mark, is people who want to believe in Tomlin do so because they have faith, because they have a feeling that he's going to be able to get it done, and they like him. And the people on the other side of the argument, for the most part, just don't have any faith that Tomlin can carry them through. And so they're just going to stick to that, and they're going to find a reason to justify the way that they feel. And that's not thinking, that's feeling. And fine, I get it. That's part of the fun of football. It's wonderful. But don't come at me with that crap. That's weak. That's a weak-ass argument.
Well, and there are facts to support both of those positions because, we know what his record is overall. We know the winning seasons in a row without a losing season. We also know the stumbles at home in the playoffs. We also know losses against teams that are inferior. I mean, there are facts that support both sides, but don't just come and scream that, you don't like him because of this one thing or you love him because of that one thing.
Right.
I mean, actually,
don't cherry pick your facts.
Perfect.
Look
term.
at all of the facts.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
draw a conclusion.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you got to do, folks, when you're talking Mike Tomlin. There's no doubt about it. Let's talk offense here because the offense, of course, did not play great at all on Sunday, but did just enough with a little help from Minkah Fitzpatrick and the defense. But Mason Rudolph, Ben, you talked a little bit about afterwards. I know you thought it might have been his best performance.
It was.
Despite statistically it not being, and as you and I have been on this earth long enough to know, statistics don't tell the whole story.
Nope.
Why do you think it was a solid performance for him?
Well, first, what people really need to take in consideration is he had 6 legitimate drops.
Very legit.
Now, I've read 7 and 8,
but
there were a couple of those drops where he threw the ball either way out in front of the receiver or behind him, and the guy got his hands on it. That's not a drop, man.
Right.
If the ball's on target and it's catchable and the receiver doesn't catch it, even if it's up high and he's got to high point it, if it's up there, like that one Juju dropped, it was up high.
Yeah.
But Juju high pointed it and he got 2 hands on it and dropped it. That's a drop as far as I'm concerned. Okay. I know it's subjective, but that's where I'm coming from. So 6 legitimate drops. If you get those back, he has, he would have been 28 of 38 on the day. And that's a damn good day. As it was, the thing that really impressed me about Mason, because he came out cold, he looked terrible to me initially. First pass, he laid it right out there for McDonald. It was a perfect throw, and McDonald dropped it.
Yep.
The next pass, I thought initially was just kind of an overthrow, or he saw one thing, and I'm sorry, the first pass was Vanette. It wasn't McDonald.
Yeah.
The next pass, right out of the gate in that drive was an out and up to McDonald, which was really well defended. And initially, I thought that he overthrew him because McDonald saw one thing and he saw another. It wasn't that. When the corner realized that it was an out and up, he just got in front of McDonald and slowed him down.
Yeah.
That's all it was. He just got in the way.
Yeah.
He just got in the way. He was just, and if they really wanted to, they could have called him for PI, but it was really well played. He had leverage, and he didn't let McDonald buy him. Good for him. Well played. And then the third play obviously was the snap over Rudolph's head that went for a touchdown, and we're going, great. Rudolph looks shaky. This isn't great. This isn't good. But then as the game went on, he seemed to gain more and more recognition of what the Rams were trying to do on defense. And at the snap, he knew where he was going with the ball, and he was whipping it out on 3-step drops, and he was money. And they weren't always catching it, as I alluded to before.
Right.
He did have 6 legitimate drops, in my opinion, but he knew where to go with the ball. He wasn't holding on to it, trying to make a decision. In the instances where he did, it was because the coverage was there.
Yeah, which happens. Yeah.
Yeah, on those quick throws, on those timing routes, he knew where to go. And his recognition, like I said, seemed to improve as the game went on. His pocket presence was getting better. His mechanics were better this week. They're not perfect yet, but they're getting better. His footwork is still a little off, and I wish he'd move a little better in the pocket. But his pocket presence is getting better. More than anything else, I thought he grew because of the obvious recognition you could see in his game.
And that's not easy to do when Aaron Donald is sitting in your lap on several occasions. I thought he grew in confidence. I thought I saw a look in him as the game went on, and it certainly has something to do with what you're talking about. When you come up to the line and you already have a really good idea of where you're going with the ball, that has to build your confidence, because it tells you that what you've prepped for, what you've studied for, and everything else is starting to pay off. And he could have easily gone into the tank because of those drops and said, geez, maybe it's just not my day. But he hung in there. Still, much like recent weeks, still made some really, really good throws at key points of the game. I don't care what anybody says. The call on 4th and 1, I realize he didn't have to throw the ball very far. That's still a tough throw. You're on the move. You got to make sure you get the ball in front of your receiver so he can have the momentum to get the first down. It's a dink and dunk. I get it, but it's still an impressive play for me from a young guy who is still developing, still learning, and everything else. And there's things. I mean, he's still got to work on leading receivers. But man, he threw some real nice darts over the middle. He still throws a fairly decent deep ball when he needs to, especially along the sideline. And I thought his fade route into Washington was a really nice throw, and obviously a really good catch there by Washington. So I tend to agree with you. I think he played very, very well. And again, you can't always look at the stats and just say, well, geez, his percentage was down. Well, the drops aside, you got to look at more than what's going on. And don't forget, Jalen Ramsey, not a real bad cornerback either. So they definitely had some talent on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm good with where he's at. And, now he's going to go up against a Cleveland defense that also has some good players on it, both in terms of pass rush and in the secondary. So we'll see exactly where he's going to go. We'll talk about the Browns here shortly, but where are you with the receiving core right now, Ben? I mean, Juju, I think we've kind of realized that he's not Antonio Brown in terms of ability, and I think we knew that going in. But
right.
Deontay Johnson's had some moments. James Washington's had some moments. I mean, where's your confidence level with this crew?
It's mixed. I think the receiving core as a whole, and I'm including the tight ends in this, had their worst game this last week. Way too many drops. Way too many drops, man. Yeah, I mean, if you're out there and the ball gets to you, you have to catch it. You can't have those kinds of mistakes this week. Right. You can't have 6 drops versus Cleveland in a hostile environment and hope to win. They got to clean that up. They're not doing their quarterback any favors. And, I recall after one of those bad drops, looking and seeing, as you just talked about this a minute ago, seeing the look on Mason's face, and he was nonplussed. He was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Let's go. Get in here. Huddle up. Let's go. Call the next play. Move on. And that was encouraging to me too. So there's the old expression that the passing relationship between the quarterback and the receiver is like a dance. They've got to be on the same page. And it seems as though that relationship grew some this week, even through some adversity, because the receivers just didn't play all that well. James Washington, obviously he played better. Yeah. He's been a player, and Deontay Johnson, really promising, really promising. Yep. And Juju is still Juju. I mean, he's not. Yeah, you're right. He's not AB, and he's maybe never going to be AB. AB's really unique. Yep. But Juju's good. He's Mr. Reliability. He just needs a little bit of help. Basically not being double covered would be nice. But yeah, I think, they got to do a little more. And I don't have a great deal of faith in Johnny Holton, and I have no faith at all in Ryan Switzer. I'm sorry. I know he's popular. Just don't have any faith in here as an offensive player. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, Switzer, by the way, is dealing with a back issue. Cam Sutton was actually returning some punts today in practice. I think that's going to be Deontay Johnson's job if Switzer doesn't go, and right now I'm guessing he doesn't. But Switzer is a tremendous individual, great human being. But look, as a football player, he's a reliable catcher of punts and kickoffs, but he's not doing anything in terms of getting you field position. He's a one hit goes down type guy, and I think they're going to move on from him at season's end one way or the other. But be that as it may, this running back situation too, it looks like James Conner will be back this week, and that's going to help significantly. Jalen Samuels did not have a great game this week, coming off that 13 reception performance.
I mean, was it that bad?
Honestly, well, no,
I don't think. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everybody who thinks that Jalen Samuels is the best running back on this team. He's not.
No,
he's not. He's not a between the tackles running back. He never has been. He's a guy who gets his yards when they run misdirection plays, and he can run wide on the stretch play or on misdirection where everything is going one direction and he goes another and catches the defense by surprise, or where he has guys that are pulling and getting out in front of him and creating some space that way. But he's not a guy that is good making his own space and then getting into space, getting to the second level. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
He's not that guy. He's not a complete running back. He's a good pass catcher and he's good in space. And we have to remember not make a complete running back.
Yeah, and you have to remember too that this guy was an H-back type in college. I mean, tight end, fullback, So no, I don't think he's a natural running back by any stretch. And he did have a drop or two during the game. I think that's probably, and obviously when you only rush for 2 yards, but a lot of those were between the tackles, which he's not great at.
He rushed for more than two. He rushed for a whole 29 yards.
Oh, I thought he was 12 for 21.
No, he was 14 for 29, and
okay.
It wasn't good, and he did. Yeah, no. I think he had one of those drops. He did.
But let me ask you this real quick, and I don't understand it. I mean I do understand what their thinking was. I guess maybe what I'm saying is I don't agree with it. Why did they go with Matt Filer over B.J. Finney and then slide Chooks Okorafor into right tackle? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, I asked somebody about that early in the week because I wanted to figure out what was going on. And initially it was because Foster wasn't practicing on Wednesday, and they wanted to get Chooks into the mix. They just wanted him to practice with the ones because they're basically trying to pull him back into the fold. They inspire his confidence, so to speak.
Yeah, he hasn't had a helmet most of the year.
Yeah, rather than having Derwin Gray play guard because B.J. Finney was playing center for Pouncey on Wednesday, rather than having Gray do it, they moved Filer over, and then they had Chooks backfill at tackle. Okay, so it's all good. Yeah, and then they liked the way that Chooks practiced on Wednesday, so they decided, let's just roll with it. And then it kind of, as the week went along, it just seemed like the right move from the standpoint that they've got Aaron Donald coming in and they move him up and down the line. And it was an opportunity to add more size to the line for this game. So they left Filer at guard, and, Filer's a very strong player. So
big dude. Big, strong dude.
Not a terrible decision from that standpoint. And they had Chooks go ahead and start. I didn't think he played all that badly.
No.
He didn't play great, but I don't think he played that badly. I don't know. What were your thoughts?
It was serviceable, like his start was last year against Denver. He did a very decent job. He wasn't getting his quarterback killed. I don't think he was great in the run game, but that wasn't really his strength coming out of college anyway. So I think he was fine. I think if you got Mike Tomlin and Sean Surratt and Randy Fichtner in a private moment, they probably are start giggling like, hey, we got away with something here because we got Chooks some playing time. We got Filer in there. We saved the wear and tear on Finney, and if we need him because Pouncey can't go, then we got him at center. And hey, we won the game. I think that's probably what they were looking at. I just look at Finney and I look at the record. The guys like the Steelers are like 9-1 when he starts. and he's a plow horse, man. And I thought he'd be great against that defense, but clearly they were looking at it, I think, more from the aspect of protection, which Finney, I think, is a little weaker at.
Right.
So I like I said, I understood what they were doing. I just had trouble whether or not I was really agreeing with it. And like I said, you got the win, you take it. And I'm sure this week now Pouncey did not practice today. It said not injury related, but
right.
So that means they were obviously shuffling again today. But it's, if they felt confident with it, then that's all I can really go on. But as far as what'd you think of Tony Brooks James?
I like him from the standpoint that I like his burst.
Yeah, hard not to that.
I wish he was a little bigger.
Yeah.
He seems to be a guy who goes down on first contact like a lot of smaller players do in the NFL. But I like his burst. He's not a guy that I would ever want to have to start in there. And
no.
He's a guy I'd really like to see him get out in space and get him the ball that way. I don't know
totally agree
how competent he is as a receiver, but I'd like to see him out there, at the second level with the ball in his hands and see what he can do. But
I'm right with you.
I wasn't disappointed. I think that Trey Edmonds needs to get his eyes examined.
Oh my Lord!
That's a
hit a hole, man! Hit the hole.
Yeah, I don't. His vision is bad, and it's not like his athleticism is. So I don't know what the deal is there. Hopefully they can coach him up, because
when you've got offensive linemen turning around with their arms spread like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
I just made a hole for you. Where'd you go?" Something's wrong, right?
Right. Right. I mean that was the Colts game, but even this week, there were some holes. There were some big holes he could have gone through, and he missed them. He went the other way. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
mean, that was a free 5 yards. All you had to do was just go.
Go. Get the 5 yards, fall forward, man.
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up, we definitely got to talk a little Browns here. At 3-6, another loss would be very devastating for their playoff hopes in the AFC. We've got them twice in the next 3 weeks now, and certainly to sweep them would probably, in the words of Ian, be the death knell for Freddie Kitchens. And I think his fate is already sealed, quite frankly. Anyway, but I think there's one major key to this game as far as the Steelers' defense against their offense, and I think it's all about Nick Chubb. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you have to you got to stop Chubb. You got to plan to stop Chubb, and you got to make Baker beat you, because Baker has not been good. He just hasn't. And, maybe somehow this week he can be better, but I don't believe him when he says he plays better when he's pissed off, because he has not played well. He's thrown a lot of picks.
Yeah.
He makes a lot of bad decisions. He throws up the desperation heave. I do not understand the guy. But Chubb is a guy who can beat you. And, on the other side, Garrett is a guy who can beat you. So, the Steelers got to take this seriously. I mean, it's not a gimme, and it is going to be a very hostile environment. Very. So I would expect the Steelers initially to have to survive some kind of onslaught, because I expect the Browns and their fans to be fired up on Thursday.
It's their season. I mean, they can't, they can't lose.
But if they can withstand that initial onslaught and still be in the game, they can win it. And, the receivers got to do a better job for Mason. And basically the defense is just going to have some faith in the defensive backfield, which I do right now, incidentally, have a lot of faith in them. Have some faith in the defensive backfield and let the defensive front concentrate on stopping Chubb and go from there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have total confidence that if the Steelers can get any sort of a lead, that will benefit them significantly because Kitchens will go away from the running game. He'll rely on Mayfield, which just falls right into our hands in terms of pass rush. That's not a very good offensive line in Cleveland,
Nope.
especially in protection. And the way we've been creating turnovers this year, I think that's kind of the formula there. In offense, as you said, you got to survive the crowd. You got to survive that initial onslaught that you know is coming. Take care of the football. No stupid penalties, that kind of thing, and just get yourself through the first quarter. Maybe you get out of it with a 3-0 lead, something like that, and you're good. Just go from there. But and also, the weather is supposed to be decent for Cleveland. I think mid-30s, partly cloudy with a slight breeze. So I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about any of the nastiness that sometimes you can get in Cleveland. But hey, it's the Browns. This is a team that we've heard about all summer long. They were on the cover of every magazine from one side of the coast to the other. This was their year, and it hasn't gone that way. But there's talent there. And if the Steelers are not taking them seriously, that talent will expose us. So we've got to go in there and definitely take care of business. I did want to get your thoughts, Ben, before I close up shop here on one other issue. How surprised are you at what the Ravens are doing?
Slightly. I mean, we've kind of seen this movie before.
Yeah,
Washington Redskins with RG3, we saw it happen before, and then eventually defenses adjusted, and they learned his tendencies when he was going to run. Mm-hmm. They learned how to better keep him in the pocket and forced him to use his arm, and he wasn't as effective. And then when he tried to do what he'd been doing previously, he was seriously injured. I never want to see somebody get seriously injured.
No.
But I kind of wonder if that isn't what's going to happen with Jackson if he keeps playing the game the way he is right now. He's got to become more reliant on his arm than on his legs. And he's using his legs and justifying that by saying, hey, as long as I keep doing this, they're going to be afraid of it, of running hard at me, and it's easier for me to pass. Well, yeah, maybe, but there's a downside to what you're doing too. And like I said, I think that defensive coordinators at the NFL are a lot smarter than you and I. And
definitely,
they figure these things out. And eventually somebody puts something on tape that works, and then everybody copies it, and it shuts it down. And before the end of the season, that's what I expect. Now, conversely, I think that the Ravens' defense is pretty damn good. I do not think
better than I thought.
Yeah, I don't think their linebackers are that impressive, but their defensive line is still pretty good, and their DBs are pretty good. They really are. So I just think as a unit, that's one of the things, one of the constants with Baltimore for 10 plus years is they've had the defense, and if you got the defense, you got a chance. So
I'm with you. I think it's been impressive. I think they're eventually gonna. All it takes in football is one play to change a season, and he's a big physical kid, and I just fear that he's gonna get hit, and that's gonna be it. And like you, I don't want to see people hurt either, but it just sure seems like he's headed for that. With that, we'll close up the show. I want to thank 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh for sponsoring us as always. And hopefully the Steelers get another win, 5 in a row. This one up in the Mistake by the Lake. For Ben, this is Steel Dad signing off. Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast. And hey, go Steelers.